Welcome back everyone to Genshin Interact. We'll be taking a look at the first half of the 4.7 banners today, with the first character being Alhaitham, and the second character that is sharing a banner with him is going to be the new character Clorinde. Let's go through both of these banners and see whether or not they are a good pulling option for you.
If you do enjoy the video, please go ahead and like and subscribe and check out the rest of the channel for other videos you may be interested in. We do also have a Discord you can join where our members talk with each other and you can even talk with us. Now, onto the video. Losing the 50-50 is the worst feeling in Genshin. And I understand, believe me. That's why whenever I have nothing left and am in the dilemma of whether or not to spend, I use Loot Bar. Loot Bar is 100% safe and only requires your Genshin UID to purchase Genesis crystals. Normally, the price for me to buy 6,480 crystals is $100, but you can see here how Loot Bar has reduced the price to about $85, and if you're a new user, you get an additional 5% off. The way it works is that Loot Bar tops up your account through the official channel with Hoyoverse. After making a purchase, you can expect to receive it in 30 minutes or less. In my case, I received mine in just about 5 minutes. Another comforting thing about Loot Bar is that they are trustworthy and offer 24/7 live support. Other creators like Dukaja, Jello Impact, Superatom, Mujin, and Tevat Times have endorsed and used this product themselves, including both Vixen and myself. Just use the link in the description to get another discount on top of the already cheaper prices at purchase. Thank you Loot Bar for sponsoring today's video, and now, let's dive in.
So the first character we obviously want to go into is talking about Alhaitham. Now, looking at Alhaitham first and foremost, he's already a character that's been here before, so we're going to kind of just go through him, kind of breezing through him. He does have an interesting kit, but the first thing, like normal with Artipo and Octopos, we want to talk about the team function, kind of where does he fit specifically in the team. He's going to be a damage character. Obviously, he's going to be your Dendro damage, main damage dealer, DPS character, and he's going to be ascending into Dendro damage bonus, which is going to help a lot with his actual damage that he's going to be outputting. Now, going beyond his Ascension, we're going to be talking about his normal attack, his skill, and his burst. Now, all of these you're going to want to level into, but mainly the skill and the burst are going to be where you're going to want to level into the most. His skill is where those projection attacks are going to be, which I'll go quickly over in 1 second. His normal attack talent, like I said, you're still going to want to level into it, although in general, it doesn't necessarily inherently do anything until you get to the skill. So jumping over into the skill, he's going to be having a tap and a hold version. The tap version is just going to immediately rush him forward to the nearest enemy, dealing Dendro damage, and causing a Chisel Light Mirror to form. Holding this version, very much like catching, you can move it around and basically almost immediately teleport to where it is, and still doing the same amount of attack, rushing forward, dealing the Dendro damage to an enemy. The Chisel Light Mirrors that you're going to be gaining here are going to be helping him allow him to actually get more damage, as well as in general give him an infusion in Dendro. So when he possesses any Chisel Light Mirrors on him, Alhaitham's normal, charge, and plunging attacks will be converted to Dendro damage. When the attacks of the aforementioned kind, whether those normal attacks, charge attacks, or plunging attacks with the Dendro on them, hit an opponent, the Chisel Light Mirror that he has will unleash a projection attack that deals AoE Dendro damage based on the number of mirrors that you have on the field. You can have a max of 3 Chisel Light Mirrors, and after 4 seconds, each Chisel Light Mirror is going to go away. Basically, every time you're going to hit an opponent with these infusion attacks, you're going to have the Chisel Light Mirror like projection attack that's going to be hitting. And that's where most of your damage is going to come from actually, compared to your regular normal attacks that you're doing in chains. In his burst, it's a pretty big boost of damage. It's kind of a nice amount of damage. It's nothing crazy. But the biggest thing that you're going to be getting here is getting Chisel Light Mirrors. And that's how you're going to want to start off your rotation actually with Alhaitham. So with this, you're basically going to be getting a certain amount of them as the kind of character progresses. If you have no Chisel Light Mirrors, you'll get 3. And if you have 1 Chisel Light Mirror, you'll get 2 once you do the burst. If you have 2 Chisel Light Mirrors, you'll get 1 mirror. And then if you have 3 Chisel Light Mirrors on Alhaitham and then use his burst like the ones previously, you will get no Chisel Light Mirrors though. He's a little bit different, so as you're using the burst, you'll kind of realize that you're going to want to start out with a rotation, because if you start with 0, you're going to get all 3, and then you can kind of go into a damage phase. Alhaitham's a very good character in general, but besides that, Rift, what can you tell us about the other character on the banner, Clorinde?
Right, so looking right at Clorinde, the new character that isn't exactly out yet, we've already done a kind of a pre-analysis video on her. I might have that linked at the top, and you can go check that out in our channel. And it's very interesting because she's actually going to be using some Bond of Life, and her team function is another DPS, and that's just where she's going to be in the team. As a main carry and DPS, it does spark a lot of questions like, okay, we have Sino, Raiden, and we'll talk about that more in the video based on where you're at in your account and if you should pull her or not. But looking at her kit specifically, crit rate, and obviously I just said she's going to be a DPS. This is going to be great for her because having more crit rate, allowing you to crit more, and her weapon going into crit damage is very good things to have on a DPS. Now, because we've had a video in the past talking about Clorinde, we do have a pre-release that I mentioned earlier. If you want to figure out more about how her kit works and you still don't really know, just go check that video out and then you can come back here and we'll continue talking about the pull value coming up on this banner with Alhaitham.
Now jumping over to the weapon banner, quickly going over both of these weapons. The Light of Foliar Incision is Alhaitham's weapon, and this is a very good weapon because at level 90, although it takes a hit in base attack, it increases a large amount in its crit damage at 88.2%. Now, at Refinement 1 for this weapon, the ability states that its crit rate is going to be increased by 4%, and after normal attacks deal elemental damage, the Foliar Incision effect will be obtained, increasing damage dealt by normal attacks and elemental skills by 120% of elemental mastery. This weapon is going to be extremely well because not only does it have 88.2% crit damage, but in its ability it just gives crit rate, which is extremely nice because obviously you want a good crit ratio, and a lot of the times with Alhaitham you're going to be focusing on attack and elemental mastery. And already with the other side of the ability, talking about the Foliar Incision effect, increasing damage based off of elemental mastery, and it's kind of more of an increase for your normal attacks and your skill hits, it's going to be extremely good for him. Some other characters you could use this for that is going to still be good is someone like Catching, because Catching still has some pretty good usability with some other characters, or at least some other teams, with especially the Dendro change. In general, she's going to be doing a lot of damage in that way. And a lot of other characters you could use them with and kind of try to force it if they use Elemental Mastery as a means to kind of help out. But mainly here, they'll probably just want it for the high amount of crit damage and the little bit of crit rate that you can get from the ability.
Now taking a look at the other weapon on the weapon banner, this is Clorinde's weapon, Absolution. Now this weapon's main stat is also crit damage. It is just half of that, being 44.1% at level 90. Now the passive does state that it will give you 20% crit damage, so that does help out a little bit, even though it does seem lower than someone like Alhaitham's weapon. But increasing the value of a Bond of Life increases the damage the equipping character deals by 16% for 6 seconds, and this does stack 3 times. So you'll be getting a total of about 48% increased damage, which is very, very good. So for someone like Clorinde, this is obviously going to be very great for her. But the question would be, or I guess the thing that kind of concerns me is like, this isn't going to be that great for other characters just because there really aren't any other characters in the game right now, at least, that can actually work with Bond of Life effectively as a sword user. So I would say that if you have this weapon or you're going after it, you should really only be going after it if you are getting Clorinde, because she's really the only character in the game by the time she comes out that can actually use this to its full effect. Overall, though, the weapon banner does seem to have pretty good value because both of these swords are crit damage swords, and you still can get that 20% off of Absolution. So it's not the worst weapon in the game, and it can still be used, has a very high base attack. So it is another option that Bennett can use, actually, because previously Mist Splitter and Aquila were the only 5-star swords that you use on Bennett for the highest base attack bonus possible. Now this is going to be a third one that you can use. So I don't think it's the worst thing in the world to actually get this weapon. If you're targeting Alhaitham's weapon, let's say, you can throw that on your Bennett if you do have him and you didn't already have Aquila or a Mist Splitter.
Now going over into our summary and just talking about the questions, kind of weighing our dangers and kind of looking at everything in general, just the pull factor and the main question of the video, which is, should you pull the character or not? Now, the first question we like to talk about is kind of multiple questions all in one, which is, do you need either character on your account? What elements or roles is your account in need of? And who else fills this role that you have? So first, looking at Alhaitham, do you need either character really, or do you need Alhaitham on your account? Alhaitham's not a necessity character that you kind of like, oh yeah, you have to have. He's not a necessity on anybody's account. But considering that he is going to be probably one of the best DPSs in the game and probably the best Dendro DPS in the game, pretty sure most people put him as the number 3 best DPS in the game behind Neuvillette and Arlecchino. And that's purely just because of how well he really does well in dual scaling and attack and elemental mastery. And he's a really, really good character in general. But if you're kind of looking for elements or roles in your account, if you have Tighnari, even if you're not a fan of bow characters, You don't really have to do anything crazy with bows and always hit your shots all the time, because a lot of the times you're going to be worrying about the extra arrows that kind of come out of Tighnari's normal charge attacks that he does. So in general with that, I would say if you have Tighnari and you like him and you can build him instead, Alhaitham's not necessary for your account. So though that kind of answers that question, at least for Alhaitham. He's a very good character and he's one of the best DPS characters in the game. So if you want him and go for him, that's great. But if you have someone like Tighnari or something and you don't want to pull on him, or if you're trying to see if I should pull him or not, if you have Tighnari, you don't necessarily need to. I would just probably stick with building Tighnari. Looking at Clorinde, the other character, kind of saying, do you actually need her? Now, she does work off of Bond of Life, which is a little bit of an annoyance, so you have to kind of focus a little bit more when you're actually talking about these types of characters. And if you have someone like Catching or Raiden is already an Electro DPS character, she's not necessarily going to be very necessary for you either. Both of these characters are really kind of extra characters that most likely later players in the game are going to grab, just as really good Dendro or Electro DPS characters. Alhaitham has a higher pull factor just because he is one of the best DPS characters in the game, but Clorinde, on the other hand, she probably could be a very, very good DPS character, but in general, looking at how she kind of works and everything, she's a little bit more difficult to understand, and in general as well, she is probably going to need to do extremely well on the new set for Bond of Life, which is going to take some grinding and some tough time to do. So if you are a newer character, she's probably a little bit farther away for you.
Looking at our next question, we ask, what kinds of teams are you trying to build? And I feel like this does kind of go hand in hand with what you actually talked about, Vixen. They're both DPSs, so a lot of their teams are pretty straightforward in terms of like how you're actually using them. If you already have those other characters, the other alternatives, like you already have Tighnari, you already have Catching, Cyno, Raiden, right? Then you're really just... I think one thing, at least for me, that can be said is a lot of those teams can be similar. Now, I know Alhaitham and Tighnari is going to be a little bit different just because the playstyle is vastly different. Alhaitham likes to stay on field for a long duration and is all about dealing damage with his normal attacks and weaving his skill in there with his mirrors, whereas Tighnari is just, you do the skill and you do 3 charge attacks, use your burst and you're out. So it's a lot different in playstyle, but they still both really, really want those Electro supports, like Raiden herself actually, because she has that duality, but also, you know, like Beto or Yaimiko, Fischl, etc. With Clorinde, if you're building any kind of Electro-focused team, you can do Aggravate with her. People have talked about that being pretty good, and I think it will do good just because Dendro really does buff Electro by a lot, just inherently. So I think she'll still be good in a team like that, much like how you would play Cyno in an Aggravate team or even Catching. But I think as a straight Electro, kind of mono-Electro DPS, more like Raiden, she can do very well there too, just because she's getting a lot of personal scaling off of her own kit and how Bond of Life would help her. The next question we look at is, do you need the weapon? So this is kind of going back to looking at the weapon banner. I did already kind of touch on it a little bit. I think at the end of the day, if you're pulling Alhaitham, I think getting his weapon is a great pull. I feel like one of those weapons that is just a massive upgrade to the character. I mean, that's a very high amount of crit damage. The passive on the weapon is insane, and it can be used on a lot of other characters too, just because it kind of is universal, you know, just in the passive, helping a lot of other characters and just crit damage, right? Whereas Clorinde's weapon, it's a little bit more tailored for her in the passive. It's not really going to help anyone else, but you still can use it on other characters just for the sheer amount of high base attack that it has. And you still are getting 44.1% crit damage plus the 20 in the passive. So you're getting 64% crit damage, which you know is non-negligible.
Now looking over into getting the characters for free-to-play players or newer players, then looking at kind of like that veteran kind of side where you're trying to look if these are good characters for the Abyss. And then obviously we'll look at some constellations. In general, when we're talking about free-to-play players, Alhaitham is probably going to be a better pull than someone like Clorinde. Like I was talking about before, Clorinde's probably going to be way more dependent on her weapon, as well as probably way more dependent on a good team. And in general, you're just going to have to focus on probably a better artifact set as well. Someone like Alhaitham, you just have to worry about getting a bunch of attack and elemental mastery and calling it a day. It's a lot easier to grind stuff in Sumeru probably, just because you have an immediate teleport there, and once you finish the first Archon quest. So a lot of these things are going to be a lot easier. Personally as well, I think that Alhaitham is going to still be a better DPS than Clorinde. In general, when she actually comes out, we'll be able to see, you know, how actually good she is when she actually drops. But looking at the veteran players, most likely, if you already like, looking at meta and who you should get, you most likely already probably have Alhaitham, and Clorinde's probably on your mind. The only thing that I would state is that if you have someone like Raiden or whatever, even if you think she's going to get power crept, Raiden is still an extremely good character, and instead of maybe looking at that, I would maybe try to go just for Raiden. Now, that takes nothing away from Clorinde, because Clorinde's probably going to come in and hit like a truck no matter what, just because of the amount of damage that she can do and how fast she's probably going to be putting it out with her normal attacks and her skill hits in that impale state that she has. Looking at constellations though, both characters I'm pretty sure have, probably in my personal opinion, between the C1 and the C2, because that's most what people are looking for when they're trying to decide for constellations. Between these two, I think both of these characters actually have better C2s than C1s. Alhaitham's first constellation basically decreases his skill's cooldown, which has a very long cooldown. When you have a projection attack in his skill, actually, when it hits an opponent, then it will decrease the skill cooldown for him. Now, his second constellation, in my personal opinion, is better, and the reason why is because you're basically going to be able to get 200 elemental mastery out of this, and with the rise in the idea in Natlin and 5.0, having the idea of the level cap increase, elemental mastery and a lot more reactions are going to do way more damage in the future, so I think that, in general, getting that C2 is probably going to be way more beneficial than the C1. Looking at Clorinde, I still believe, like I said before, that her C2 is going to be better than her C1. Her C1 is basically going to be triggering extra coordinated attacks when you do the normal attacks in her skill's Night Vigil state, and it's going to do an extra little bit of damage for you. It's going to do like 30% of Clorinde's attack as electro damage extra, and it's 2 of those attacks each time you do a normal attack, so it's a good amount of damage. But her C2 is going to be enhancing one of her passive talents, which it changes to after a nearby party member triggers an electro-related reaction, which most people are going to be doing a lot of Dendro teams with her. Electro damage dealt by Clorinde's normal attacks, and her burst will be increased by 30% of Clorinde's attack for 15 seconds with a max of 3 stacks. And personally, I just feel like that damage difference is going to be way better on that C2 than the C1. So personally, for both these characters, I would go for those constellations.
Well, we hope that this video could help you decide on whether these characters or weapons coming up on this next banner are for you.
As always, if you have any suggestions that may help other players, go ahead and let us know in the comments. Make sure to like, subscribe, and check out our Discord as well. Thank you again for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one.